G'day, welcome back. This is a quick follow-up to my previous video where we introduced a new searching function to Scoutfish and basically just generally looked at Scoutfish and what a fast and useful searching program it is in terms of doing our chess research. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is actually use it. I'm going to use this find mate moves. And what I'm going to do in particular is I'm going to find moves where a player checkmates with his king. Now, obviously, checkmating with the king is sort of infeasible, I guess, is the right way of saying it. But what happens is that the move that the attacking player plays will discover an attack and checkmate the opponent's king. So that's a nice little thing to investigate. So let's crack straight onto it. Go to my capture screen. Now, so what we're going to have a look at is the process I follow. So basically, you kind of start off with Python, and I'll use Python to create a query, which I can then use in a Scoutfish, and then that will give me back a list of games, and that's sort of the groundwork done. And then often in other scenarios I have used Python again to do some further filtering, like with smothered mates, but in this case it's just going to list of games, and then you go and have fun looking at the list of games and seeing what interesting things happen. So on the screen up there, which I've shown you a few times, which is from the GitHub page of Scoutfish, and you should look at it. It goes through all the different types of filters you have: white move, e8 queen, and it's like this sort of splash page for it, because it actually shows you this little program here, which I've basically bastardized in a few different ways. Right, you create a query, get the result of the query, and the result of the query returns the list of games and which move in the game is when the query is satisfied. And then as a final step, you need to get the games, and that's when it goes back to the original PGN file and grabs the PGNs. If you want more information about that, just go back and see the previous video I did on it, and then you can print the games out. Okay, so we're going to do something along those lines. Let me close that. Okay, Python terminal over here, and this page will do. So I'm setting up my query now. I normally do very horrible Python code, but I decided to choose this into to change this into a list comprehension, mate move king plus chess square, right? And that will give you a king moving to any of the squares. And then as I did a second run later, so if I originally this line wasn't here, but obviously you can also checkmate with the king by doing a castling move. And a quick look. This is the query it puts into Scoutfish. You can see mate move, all the moves on the board, and then I did it again with this. Actually seemed to require capital O's rather than small o's to work properly. And you can see that I came up with 148 games where the king delivers checkmate in inverted commas, and 25 where in inverted commas castling delivers checkmate, right? So that's what I wanted to show in terms of, it's like this you can understand my process. I want to look at interesting features of chess, and Scoutfish is a very good filter for finding them, and this is the way to do it using Python and Scoutfish. Now, having done that, we go to the normal capture screen, and you can see here, if we go to the game list, you can see down the bottom it says I've actually created a database here of 148 of the games, and that's better because you can edit them. And then I've just downloaded the PGN of the 25 games where checkmate is delivered by castling. So I've just picked a few games here, and it's basically we're just going to have a bit of fun going through a few games. With the first one, you can see them. I've kind of sorted it by date. These first couple don't have date, and I always find it most interesting to sort of find the earliest examples of these things happening. So, and then try and sort of go through here. There's a list of reasons. Maybe just a little bit. Yeah, list of reasons about why the checkmate by king move actually happened. So we're going to look at Neumann versus Holzwarth, and go back a move. Yeah, so this is just a feature of this type of checkmate where it's I was going to do a discovered. It's often okay. It's going to be discovered check. It's going to be way to complete a combination. There's going to be king hunt, and they're going to be king hunts animating web. Now you can see this. You can see that the black king is very restricted. This pawn's on f6 is covering g7 square, so just need to get check on the king, and that's actually what happened. This is pretty neat. Sacrifice your queen, king takes back, and now king backs drop to g1, and there's checkmate. Right? There's no pieces that get interpose, and no square to escape
So that's a nice example. And then I'm going to look at another one by Pillsbury versus Maroxy. Now, the interesting about this is, actually I haven't got it up anymore. When I go through this, you look at different players, and actually like Pillsbury, very, very strong player. And on the Wikipedia, he gives his career record against Chess World Champions show. Very, very strong player, but died quite young. So we didn't get the best out of him. And Maroxy, obviously famous for the line in the opening with pawns on c4 and e4. So let's have a look at what this one came about. And it's the same thing here. I mean, you can go into more detail. In fact, here I go back to this position. In fact, that rook to h1 is preparing for it. And this is the blunder. Basically, the checkmate, eventually the king will duck back to g2. So it's suggesting bishop to b5. The rook retreating does not help things. Now, queen's getting very, very dangerous. I mean, basically the game is lost already, but what he played was kind of worse because you take there and now queen sack, and there's a nice discovered checkmate. And as I said, if he'd kept the square on g2 covered, I mean, it may not have been so easy. In fact, if you go back to this position here, the game is basically even if black plays bishop b5 and then... Okay, next I'm going to do the whole game. It's Kurz-Treybal. So I think I covered this before in my king hunt videos, which is where I did a similar thing. I used Scoutfish to find king hunts, and the way you did that is by detecting if the king got checked onto the other side of the board. Okay, let's go through this game. It's quite a nice game. e4, e5, or king's gambit, perfect, always good. Bishop c4, g5, knight to e5, queen to h4. Check. I'm going through reasonably quickly. Okay, king f1, knight f6, getting another piece out. Bishop takes f7 check. Still okay. King d8, d4, another piece out. Okay, knight takes c6 check. Bishop takes c6. Brings a knight c3, and now it's actually getting bad for white. But the best move here is bishop a6 check. You're forcing the white king into the corner, but black did not do that. f3, still worthwhile trying to break into the opponent's king. g3, big mistake. Queen h3 check, king f2, queen g2 check, king e3, looking very bad. Bishop a6 was played, and that's a good move. It's cutting the king in terms of the retreat, and now there's a very nasty threat. Bishop to h6 check, so therefore the king goes on a runner. So now this is the pattern we're going to start seeing. How is this king going to get checkmated by the black king move? Queen to h5 check. I mean, you can load this game up in database, have a more careful look at it yourself, but I just found this is an amazing game. Sacrifices the bishop, and now the king is forced to the back rank, and you can see what's going to happen here. There's no escape squares. The mating net's been set up, and that is checkmate. Right, so that's a very exciting king hunt, and the checkmate is delivered by a king move. I was going to look at Alec, but I might skip towards to the most famous one, I would say, between Edward Lasker, that's the other Lasker, and I've got his book, Chess for Blood, or Chess for Fun, or whatever, right? I've got to sort of reread that. And George Allen Thomas, he's quite a strong player, and you read his Wikipedia, he's also played badminton. Interesting what other interests people have. So let's go through this game. This is a good game. It's a Dutch defense. Let's quickly move through the moves. And you can see a couple of threatening knights there, which is going to be key in a second. Oh, it's looking really nasty now. And this last move is basically the big mistake. Should snap off. Bishop takes e5, probably the best move here. Snap off one of the knights. Right, so the problem that black is going to have is what Lasker did. Queen takes h7 check. Wow, got to take it. Now, this is a really interesting tactical study. Actually, you can analyze it at the end if you like. So pause the video, analyze it, come back. You see this is beautiful. This is double check. And go back into the corner, you can see the mating net's already closing. This square is covered. That square will be covered, and therefore knight to g6 would be mate. So you force the king out. This is the whole thing. I mentioned this sort of mating web as well as the king hunt. And now it's basically just check that king up the board. There's no alternative. Check that king up the board. Nowhere to go. Check that king up the board. And this is where the the killer move is played. King d2 and checkmate. It's interesting to point out that it's been pointed out by many people that castling was also checkmate, and that would have been pretty damn neat. As I've got a second file of casting checkmate, so we can look at a couple in there. But this would have been brilliant in its own right. But it's brilliant already. It's one of the most amazing King Hunt games that you can sort of go through. So the next one I'm going to look at is I really learned something with this. Let's have a look. Don't be too casual. Don't be too casual. This is a drawn endgame. Drawn bishop endgame. You've got a fortress. Probably you should just, if you can, you hover between these two squares, and if you can't, well, then you can go back into the corner. But have a look what happens. Should have played king f1 here, and then, as I pointed out one of those earlier things, this pawn's covering that square all the time, so the black king can't approach. Yeah, but what he'd do is that it's a checkmate. So if you ever have this fortress-style bishop endgame, do not let yourself get checkmated in the corner. So that's I think that was a fairly funny one. Let's have a look at this one. I'm going to. I've looked at quite a lot of these games, and they're all a lot of fun. But let's move on to. Going to skip a couple I was going to look at, and we're looking for Lasker. This is the game, and this is out of thin air because I thought it was really amazing. There's not many pieces on the board. Everything looks fine, but you can see that there is a bit of a mating net here already. A lot of squares covered, so white should be careful. Rook g2, for instance. What he played? Rook to h2 and king g6, and obviously if his rook was here, that would have stopped that move. And that's checkmate because I said that the mating web is there, and it's quite nice because it's discovered check by a bishop, discovered checkmate by a bishop on a king move. Okay, let me find the next one. So actually now what I'm going to move on to is actually give a good flavour of, there's 148 games, and a lot of them are really fun looking games like that. And then now we're going to look at the ones where castling was actually the coup de grace. The first one, you got to look at this. I thought this is, you'd think it's just Nakamura playing, right? So obviously some of these games are jokes, right? Just look at that. It's actually unusual checkmate because it's the rook acting up on the file rather than the rank. And obviously, all the squares are covered by all those knights in multiple ways. And the queen covers there. So, that one's a bit ridiculous, but it shows you what's going on. So what I wanted to look at, No Name versus Maya. It's always, when you look at No Name, you wonder whether it's a true recollection of the game. But you can see this absolutely fantastic end position. Don't want to go through the whole game. Checkmate. Castling kingside, right? Very strange. I mean, you can actually have a look at have the king get up there. I mean, does that look like a real game? It could be, but obviously... There you go, and we'll look at one last game, which I'd highlighted, Tar versus Carter. Let's have a look at why I picked that one. Oh, same thing. You actually do see this tactic a bit in those King Hunt videos we found later, where the king gets driven down to the opposite side, and then you castle, and once again, you checkmates delivered along the file. Okay, I might stop it there. So as I said, I just wanted to say that, I've created a new search function, and I'm creating it for a reason. I want to go look at different things, and this mate move function actually let me find this list of games very quickly. So think of your own sort of searches and types of games you want to look for. Okay, great. I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you very much for watching.